1977 Sony Trinitron KV1215. This is a bit of a special set. It's modified for the motion picture industry, and I'm videoing it at 24 frames per second, which is cinematic. Film is still captured 24 frames per second, and we're going to repair this set. You have to kind of look very closely to see the issue, and the camera might be correcting for it. And I'm actually using a special rack mount standards converter to generate the test pattern you're looking at, basically at 24 hertz, which matches 24 frames per second. So the TV is the vertical specially adjusted to lock on to the lower frequency. Now, the problem that's reported here is most likely a filtering issue, and the 60 hertz from our line frequency is interacting with the frame rate and causing this pulsing in the picture. And I'm going to try and zoom in on where I see it the worst here, which, if you look right there, and I really think the camera is largely correcting for it, but you can see it jiggling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the special test patterns this box, the standards converter, generates. And we'll see if we can find one that shows up in the camera. And all of these test patterns are very sort of specific to the motion picture industry. So let me try and center this up a little bit if I can. So you could, I don't know if you could see the beat pattern there. Now, to me, that's like seizure level if you're looking at that. And I see the camera's kind of wigging out a little bit. There's a little bit of us having trouble syncing to that. Yeah, if you look over here, you can really see this. Like, I know the picture is noisy, but this is the happenings right now, and this is pretty awesome. I wish this... One thing about this TV is the sound doesn't work, so I think we should investigate that. Right now I'm feeding the converter box into the standards converter, so I'm feeding 2997 into the converter, and it's down converting it to 24 frames per second, which my camera is videoing at 24 frames per second. And this is pretty awesome. It's too bad we can't hear it, but one issue with this TV is it doesn't have any sound, and that could be related to the pulsing. If you look at the 9 in the lower corner here, you can see the pulsing. But this is kind of funny. The LAPD found this big cache of fireworks in this house, and they felt it was safer to bring it out and detonate it in this special truck. Well, it blew the truck apart, and it blew the neighborhood apart, and it blew all the cars around it apart. And, you know, of course, it's just government. It'll just be like, oh, you know, oh, that's what homeowners insurance is for, you know. There you go. It's pretty cool that the local CBS caught it on camera here, because it just destroyed everything around it. I want to see, there's a good ground shot of that truck right there, and it's just hilarious how the light, you see the light bar come flying off as this truck just gets EOL'd. And of course a bunch of people got hurt. And all right, let's dig into this thing and see if we can fix it. Let me take a second here and try and elaborate on the 24 frame per second thing, because I don't know if that was clear. So let's say you go to the cinema. So you go into a theater and you sit down like people kind of did pre-pandemic. I guess that's still opening back up. What you're watching, the movie, the cinematic movie, is 24 frames per second. Usually television in the United States is 29.97. PAL in Europe is 25 frames per second. A lot of people online want everything to be in 60 frames per second. I don't know why, but the problem with 60 frames, the problem for me setting my camera to 60 frames per second and uploading 60 frames per second, YouTube forces everyone to watch 60 frames per second. So I've done it. People with older systems complain that they have trouble playing back 60 frames per second. So I use 30 frames per second, 29.97. If you're in the cinema and this TV would be used in the movie you're watching, and it wouldn't just have a rolling unusable image, it would have an actual image that the camera could sync to. So let's just be hypothetical here and say there was a shot of the subject in the movie watching the president speak. They would be able to cut to the TV and actually show what you would see if you were standing in the room, a picture that was in sync with the 24 frame per second. So in order for that to work in this TV, there's some modifications done to the vertical which drop the scan rate down and change the geometry a little bit. And what we believe is happening here is we have an issue where we're getting 60 hertz from bad filtering or voltage regulator issue or something that's interfering and creating a beat pattern with that 24 frame per second or that lower vertical scan rate that would not be as detectable if you were only doing 29.97. So if you get a bad filter capacitor on a TV with 29.97, if you're feeding it just a standard 29.97 or 30, we'll just say 30, you get these slow moving hum bars that move up, right? Well, that's because the beat pattern's fairly close. As you change the scan rate, you drop it to 24 or 48 hertz, the beat rate is farther apart, so it moves faster. It gets its torque on a little bit faster. Anyway, this will probably be a bad capacitor. You might want to get your lotion out. Let's go. So also, if I wasn't clear, this video, I'm having to use sort of a pro camera to do this video. And it's set to 24 frames per second. So this video might look a little different than my usual video. This is a super low hour mint condition set. Very, very rare. Where is the main filter on this? I thought usually they were... Oh yeah, there it is down there. Wow, it's an old... So I think, as I mentioned, that's the old, just the regular can type, the aluminum can without the wrapper on it. I think, as I mentioned, I was talked about maybe the sound is intentionally disconnected on this. Let me look at this, because these TVs, you know, if something like the audio output was shorted, it could load the regulator down and cause 60 hertz, a slight 60 hertz noise. So the sound is not working. We probably need to look into that first and see why the sound is not working before we go after the power supply. Okay, what I see here is they got the speaker disconnected, which that would probably make sense because you wouldn't want that if you were filming. You would probably want to dump your audio in. Let me just see. So yeah, okay. So this is not going to affect. This is not going to affect the power supply hum. I just wanted to go after this because you always want to correct an obvious problem before you chase a more subtle problem, because they could be linked together and related. Like I said, we could have had shorted audio output transistors putting an additional load on the power supply, which would cause the filters to not be as effective because they were not designed for the additional load. Okay, we basically have 3 filter capacitors here on the 60 hertz side. We have this 470 and this 10. These are both in the same can, which is, like I said, the big aluminum can right here. I've already ordered these. They're all here. We also have one other one, this one right here, C531. I'd like to test the voltage coming out of the regulator first. Should have 115 volts coming off of the emitter here. I'd like to check that. We could also look at the AC ripple on it. It should be pretty small, 0.1 volt. Looks like we're at 118 volts on the B+. It's a little bit high. I'm going to try and pull down on that a little bit. What would a video be without a helicopter, right? Let's see what kind of damage I can do here. This is always old sketch-tastic. Okay, there we went down to 115. Let's measure the AC here. Ooh, that is kind of high. It said 0.1, right? That is a little bit on the high side. Okay, let's see what we got here. I'm trying to hold this camera still. This is AC. So we got 4 volts there. Let's see what we got here. We got 0.1 there. So how do we have 7? How do we have 7 on the emitter? Look at the schematic. Okay, so this is C531 here, which is this one right here. And it has 20 volts AC across it. And that is that black guy right there. Where is it? I can't. That one right there. I'm going to pull that out. Any electrolytic with 20 volts AC across it is suspect. Let's go to DC here. $115. Wow. So that a lot of that must be horizontal trash. Okay, so here's our capacitor. And yeah, it looks pretty crispy. I don't see where the spooge is leaking at the bottom, but it almost looks like it's partially blown out the bottom. Let's do this. Let's test it. I kind of expect it to not be any good just by the way it looks, and yeah, it should be 33 microfarads. It's measuring 9,000 picofarads. Yeah, so that sucker is roached. So here's our new one. Like I said, I already went through the schematic and parts list and bought these before I started the video. When I select capacitors off of DigiKey, I don't go by price. I go by the longest life and the highest current handling at 120 Hertz. That's how I select them, which is also the lowest ESR. So, which, like I say, they're not the cheapest. I usually go for the most expensive. And here's how our new one tests. Check out what the bottom of the board looks like under the capacitor, and I don't know if that's that glue or that's the spooge that leaked out of the cap. Anyway, I'm going to clean that off. Okay, our new capacitor is in. We now have 114 volts DC across it. Let's go to AC. We have 0.28, 0.28. Before we had 20. So I think I need to bring the voltage back up a little bit. It was probably off because of all that AC getting back into the regulator. I'm back on the emitter of the regulator transistor, and I adjusted it up to 115 volts. Now when we started, we had, what, 8 volts of AC here? We now have 0.1. So this capacitor being bad, the one I changed, was allowing probably a lot of horizontal AC to get back into the system. So I'm going to say we're good here. With 0.1 volts of AC, this big capacitor down here is doing its job. I'm not going to screw with it. I can't say that I've ever seen one of those big ones go bad in this era of TV. The main filter, it's always these little ones that go bad. Let's just take a minute and bask in the beauty that is this low hour 1977 Sony Trinitron KV1215. This is a 9.8 out of 10. Nah, 9.5 out of 10. Look at no dust on the high voltage. The flyback is clean. Absolutely a thing of beauty. I did reconnect the speaker so we can watch some TV tonight. We gonna watch some court TV. It's like mint condition. 12 inch. It's real small. See? Okay, we got the speaker hooked back up. The beat problem is gone. That capacitor fixed it. We are using the over-the-air converter box, and we're outputting composite video. The red and white wire there, the red is audio and the white is video. And we are inputting that into our standards converter here, and then our standards converter is outputting on channel 3 into the set. We are inputting 30 frames per second, and we are outputting, see if I can focus on this. We are outputting 23,976.
When you humble yourself under the mighty hand of God in due time.
And so we're watching this at 24 frames per second. And I can see it flickering. I mean, it has that theater, that movie theater flicker to it. And I hope this video doesn't annoy everybody. But we're going to watch the news on this. Okay, so what we can do is we can go through our test patterns. And you'll see the jiggle is gone here. You see down in the lower right hand corner, see how stable it is now? Grayscale. These are all different custom. Looks like the trapezoid needs to be adjusted a little bit. Yeah, need to adjust the pin cushion. Probably when I corrected that capacitor, it changed. I can do that later. Red, green, blue. This is the strobing blue, yellow, which the camera is in sync, so you only see yellow.
Live from the broadcast center in Los Angeles, this is KCAL9 News at 8.
I love the light bar.
Tonight at 8 o'clock after the fireworks explosion that rocked a South LA neighborhood, residents cleaning up the debris as investigators try to figure out how it happened.
Looks like a lot of cracks on that one. Why hasn't the county been involved for the last few years?
That's a good question.
Also, quick action from local officials 1 day after a KCAL9 exclusive exposed problems at a South End condo complex.
I had a new strategy tonight to deal with LA's homeless crisis. Welcome to KCAL9 News 8 o'clock, streaming live on CBS in Los Angeles. I'm Jeff Barr.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susie Suh. Tonight, a South LA neighborhood is still reeling after a massive fireworks explosion injured 17 people.
Federal investigators will move in tomorrow, we're told, to begin their search for answers after that devastating blast. KCAL9 Chef Nouet has tonight's top story.
I can't speak for the entire nation, but I'll say that I've never seen that before, and I've been working for ATF for over a decade.
Federal agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives are surveying the damage and beginning the process of reconstructing what led to this. A massive explosion that injured 17, including 10 law enforcement officers and 7 civilians. It happened when the LAPD tried to detonate illegal fireworks that were seized in a home in South LA. Lieutenant Raul Jovel is with the LAPD.
You have to follow protocols in place. So they'll be looking at that, also looking at human error.
Jovel says officers went door to door to alert neighbors the detonation was going to take place last night and asked them to leave their homes.
After the explosion, discovered that some folks were still within that vicinity that didn't answer the door, and that's how we discovered that some folks were injured.
Retired San Bernardino Police Department SWAT member Johnny Turner says law enforcement can't force people out of their homes.
Unfortunately, that's a problem that's very common with high-risk situations because the general public knows that they may be out of their house for an extended period of time.
Arturo Sejas III has been arrested on suspicion of reckless or malicious possession of a destructive device after police got a tip that led to the discovery of about 5,000 pounds of fireworks, including more unstable improvised explosive devices with simple fuses. 40 were the size of a soda can and 200 smaller ones with similar construction. The LAPD says that was part of the decision to detonate what was found on scene.
Because it's just too dangerous to transport on a normal vehicle.
The LAPD says the iron chamber can handle up to 15 pounds of explosives. The chief says there were 10 pounds in there last night at the time of the detonation. The ATF says the National Response Team will start processing the scene tomorrow morning. Reporting from South LA, Jeff Nguyen, KCAL 9 News.
And people who live in that neighborhood where that blast happened spent the day cleaning up the mess left behind. There is debris and shattered glass everywhere. KCAL 9's Jake Reiner spoke with residents about the damage.
We often say people try to pick up the pieces after a disaster, but Marlon Enriquez is dropping them. One by one, pieces of his mother's shattered window.
Right now, I'm just trying to get rid of all the free pieces of glass just so they don't fall inside the house.
Marlon's mother's house is like many homes in this stretch of South LA.
Well, it blew the windows out of everything, didn't it?
It was your bedroom window?
Yeah.
Diana Chan was in her bedroom when the explosion happened. It shattered her window too.
I heard that the window broke, but luckily, it didn't hit me or anything because the curtains were closed, so yeah. It was kind of scary.
Others weren't as lucky. Several people were injured. The Red Cross set up a shelter at the Trinity Rec Center. They say they're currently assisting 20-plus evacuated people with shelter and food, like the Martinez family.
Things are temporary, but lives aren't, so at least we're happy that, there wasn't any deaths.
The Martinezes, like a number of their neighbors, potentially won't be let back in until at least Sunday. Maria Aguirre is likely stuck here until Sunday. Her friend helped us translate.
They cannot go in or out right now.
While Marlon Enriquez assesses what it'll cost to fix the damage, he also has some questions for law enforcement.
They're supposed to be professionals or whatever, so I just kind of think that they should have already known the risks of it.
Again, the Red Cross station is set up at the Trinity Rec Center. We will put the address as well as a phone number if you need to contact them on our website, kcal9.com. Reporting in South LA, I'm Jake Reiner, KCAL 9 News.
And tonight, local fire officials are asking people to do what someone in that South LA neighborhood did: call 911 if you see anything suspicious. They're also pleading with people to leave fireworks to the experts this 4th of July weekend. They said the danger and drought makes fireworks especially risky this year.
Every year we have these press conferences about the dangers of safe and sane fireworks and the illegal fireworks, and every year it gets worse. It's really important that we continue the message. It's important that our citizens, when they see something, say something and call their local law enforcement.
Cal Fire officials tell us they seized nearly 80,000 pounds of illegal fireworks along the border in May and June.
Well, as we look towards Independence Day, many are wondering if we'll have a safe and sane forecast on the 4th.
Evelyn Tapp joins us now with the Star-Spangled Outlook, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. And of course, I have your
That's about as much as I can take. Anyway, that's repair of a 1977 Sony Trinitron KV1215 at 24 frames per second. This is a different one.